So I've invested in tons of like business coaching courses. I've worked with individual mastermind coaches. I've been a part, again, that's how I met Ashley, is we were a part of that group. And I've done these investments in myself or in my business. And so and I remember being very honest with Ashley about this, that, while this was a big investment, because my family is my second priority after my relationship with the Lord, and it falls above my business and it falls above myself, I knew that it would be worthwhile to have this comprehensive place that I can go over time, that Ashley has kind of put everything into one easy course, which obviously I've worked through courses before. So I knew that would be exactly what I needed. And so even though it was a difficult decision to kind of make that investment, because it's not a small one, it was worth every bit, because I'm putting that, they say your priorities are where you spend your time and your money. And for me, absolutely, it's already been worth the investment. And I'm only 20% of the way through it, I think.
Hey Mama, I'm Ashley, and welcome to the Veggies and Virtue podcast. In this podcast, you will find simple menu ideas, kitchen organizational systems spelled out for mom life, and feeding tips and tricks that are both evidence-based and grace-laced. I believe that you can find flexibility when it comes to feeding your family so that you can feel calm, capable, and connected in the kitchen. As a registered dietitian and Christian mom of 3 myself, I want you to break free from the mealtime battles and to feel equipped while feeding your kids all day long. Pull up a stool at my kitchen counter and let me pour you a cup of coffee and say a quick prayer for you. It's time to chat about the mealtimes, messes, moments, and ministry of motherhood.
Y'all, this was a fun one for me. Each of these interviews has been a blast, and I truly, genuinely hope that they've been helpful for you in evaluating, is Mealtimes Made Easy Method a good fit for you? Do you feel that nudge that this is something that you've been waiting for and praying on in your family's life when it comes to making mealtimes easier for you? I want to join in this journey with you, and I am so honored when I get the opportunity to. But I also want to share with you one more interview today. I promise this will be the last one because enrollment closes tomorrow. So this is really your last call. If Mealtimes Made Easy Method is something that appeals to you, you're interested in, if you haven't inquired about it, please, please, please reach out to me today so that I can help answer any questions that you have before the program enrollment closes for the season. However, the last interview I'm going to share with you is Heather, and I'm going to go ahead and call Heather my friend, even though we haven't met in real life. She is someone that I've gotten to know quite well over the last year. However, the capacity in which I know Heather is purely professional. She and I both joined a podcast mastermind back in January 2022 when she and I both were launching our podcast and getting into kind of this new business venture. She's in a totally different field than I am, and yet she is just a gem of a human. And as I'm learning more and more, such an intentional, wonderful mom that I've gotten to work alongside in more of my own scope of practice, feeding her family. So I hope that this will be a helpful perspective, and make sure to stick around till the end in case Heather might be someone that would be a good professional connection for you. She's someone who might be able to help a lot of you who are in the network marketing world and are trying to build teams while either working from home or doing it in the nap time and nighttime margin that I know oh so well. Heather, this is so fun to have you on here. You and I get to Zoom a little bit and Vox often together from our business mastermind, which is how we met. But it's really special to get to have you on the show today and just get to chat with you, because you and I kind of have a less traditional relationship than I have with some other moms in my community, being that we met from the business sense. And you're not in the feeding space and not in the nutrition world. And yet we've been able to work alongside each other in a lot of different ways to just help kind of spur on our businesses and stuff. But I've loved also getting to connect with you as a mom and with your girls and kind of understanding a little bit more about your needs in that, side of life and things. So I'd love if you don't mind just kind of introducing yourself a little bit to my audience so they can get to know you a little bit better.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. And y'all, Ashley, I know you know this because you love her podcast as much as I do, but she's such a gem. And I'm like, how did I not know her a year ago? Like, this is so crazy. And again, like she said, we connected because we actually started our podcast around the same time. So I didn't even know Ashley, didn't know Veggies and Virtue or anything until not that long ago. And when I figured out that she was talking all about the things that were near and dear to my hearts and my goals for my personal life, which was to really create a better environment around meal times for my family. I've got a husband who has like kind of some dietary restrictions. And then I have two very, very picky, but yet older kids. I have a 9-year-old girl and a 13-year-old girl, both of them very picky. I was a super picky child myself. And I think, to be honest, that's part of the problem, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But when I found Ashley's podcast, and especially when I found the course, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the answer to what I've been looking for. Because as a busy working mom who works from home, who wants to make her family a priority, but really kind of has all these issues when it comes around the relationship with food and feeding, Ashley has just been such a blessing. So that's kind of my backstory is work from home, got those two beautiful, very picky girls. And I'm so thankful for Ashley to be able to help me work through this.
Thank you. That's fun for everyone to get to hear a little bit, especially knowing that everyone's at different life stages and has different ages and stages of kids. And some people are, kind of beginning on the picky eating journey with, toddlerhood. And some of my community is more in your boat where it's like, we have older kids. We've kind of been like wading through these waters for a long time, but not necessarily known the direction to go. So obviously you and I you knew about Mealtimes Made Easy well before it was ever live. You got to be inundated with all my ideas and, kind of the creation of the course on the back end from a business perspective, but walk us through a little bit of what your process was for kind of the problems that you were facing when you decided this was a course that was a good fit for you. Cause you kind of, you were so sweet and so supportive throughout the whole process, but I was speaking to you as a business colleague, not necessarily as a mom who I knew even needed this product. So kind of walk us through how you knew that the course would be a good fit for you, but also some of the things you were going through at the time that you decided that.
Sure. Well, like I said, I probably started first listening to your podcast more as like the business side of seeing how you were doing it and how your setup was. And I loved your style. I loved your cover art, all the like, all those details. And I just liked you too. I was like, oh, I like this girl. But then when I started listening to your episodes and learning about like the relationship with, the food and the roles that we have as parents, it like hit something. I literally just kind of got chills. Like it hit something in my core to realize this was something that I needed to look into deeper for the better benefit of my family. And that this was something that I needed to make more of a priority. I had already set for last year, the beginning of last year, a goal around making that mealtime a more of a focus, I should say. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know how to implement it. And so I was so thankful that the episodes that Ashley puts out on the podcast were really kind of speaking to those needs as I went throughout the year. However, I knew that because a lot of our issues like the picky eating, and the fact that I wish I had this information when my kids were toddlers. I'm like, oh, Ashley, where were you when I had little ones? Because it would have been such a blessing then. And I'm sure you probably were still doing your thing, but I'm grateful to have the information now. And I knew that I needed that deeper dive into things like the feeding relationship, really getting my kitchen, in order to set the boundaries around creating that environment. And it wasn't necessarily going to come through just listening to an inspiring podcast each week. So I've invested in tons of like business coaching courses. I've worked with individual mastermind coaches. I've been a part, again, that's how I met Ashley, as we were a part of that group. And I've done these investments in myself or in my business. And so and I remember being very honest with Ashley about this, that, while this was a big investment, because my family is my second priority after my relationship with the Lord, and it falls above my business and it falls above myself, I knew that it would be worthwhile to have this comprehensive, place that I can go over time, that Ashley has kind of put everything into one easy course, which obviously I've worked through courses before, so I knew that would be exactly what I needed. And so even though it was a difficult decision to kind of make that investment, because it's not a small one, it was worth every bit, because I'm putting that, they say your priorities are where you spend your time and your money. And for me, absolutely, it's already been worth the investment. And I'm only 20% of the way through it, I think.
It's just fun to hear that perspective of it, of course, because you and I have talked about it in a different way too, but something that came up, and I hope this is okay to share here publicly, but I remember 2022, pretty sure your word was integrate. And as you were talking, it was funny because I've heard you talk about that in the business sense so many different ways over the last year since getting to know you. But when I hear it today, it makes me think about how much it seems like you've been able to kind of integrate all the different angles of feeding your family. Knowing that, you obviously know all the back end of my Mealtimes Made Easy method, even before you chose to join the course, but everyone else, listening may not kind of understand the structure and things like that. Like you said, you're about 28% of the way through the course, but walk us through a little bit of kind of what some of the gains you have had are, or some of the things, that you're looking forward to might be.
Yes. So I love, and yes, integrate was my word of the year last year. And I think that you do such a beautiful job within this course of really clearly organizing all of the kind of difficult topics and how it does all integrate in terms of your relationship, your family's relationships, the organization of your home, the different kind of like research and things that have gone into the mindset around things like diets and the history of that kind of diet culture. And so it's a really comprehensive, but yet really well organized course. And that's probably been my favorite thing, is that even though I've only worked through the first and I'm starting on the second, the first is the reset phase, which I think was an incredible foundation to start, because it made me get things in order. It made me, really go through my fridge, my pantry, and like my snack bin and things like that, to where I can kind of set myself up and set my family up for success. And really, like you said, it's kind of integrating like the dietary needs of my husband, which are going to be very different from what my kids are going to eat, but yet setting up a system within our environment to set the rest of the things up for success. But I'm really looking forward to diving into the second module in the course, which is all about the relationships, because I know that this is my issue. And this is probably like the biggest challenge, but I know that it will probably be the biggest blessing when I can kind of get to the bottom of some of the issues that our individual relationships are causing with food, like the way my husband grew up and how his mom instilled, like, for example, pasta and cheese. He grew up thinking that they're like evil, like they're going to kill, like literally we've gotten into arguments where I've made pasta before and he feels like I'm going to kill him. Like that was literally an argument we had, but guess what? Pasta is my favorite food. And so, or like, you'll read articles that like butter's unhealthy, and then another article that butter is a good healthy fat, and blah, 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 so it's this constant battle from our relationships that we've had in the past, bringing that together in terms of a marriage, and then trying to parent two picky, growing, almost teens or preteens. It's a challenge. And so I'm very much looking forward to getting more into that module. And it's already been great from what I've listened to so far.
I love hearing that. And I think, as you were saying it, I was like, you do such a better job explaining the integration of the course than I do. And so I'm like, here, while I fumble over my words, you saying it made it sound like, yes, that is it. And I know, from the backside of this and the business side, you've been really helpful, because I've inquired with our, core little group and asked, should I be breaking this course up into like, say, 4 or 5 different courses, and being able to make it even more affordable for people and breaking it up. And you've been one of the biggest advocates for, this is so much bigger, and not in terms of like, this is so much grander in an overwhelming sense, but this course is so much more comprehensive. And I think, again, it integrates the 4 different like kind of key or core aspects of feeding our families. And it shows you how they all kind of fit together, with the goal that you can continue to rinse and repeat. So whether you have toddlers or whether you have teens, you can continue to see how you use these 4 phases together and get that ball rolling, because it's go through the 4 phases and then rinse and repeat, because every time you're going to get something different. And I appreciate that you've just really stood behind that, because with me not offering an item that's a higher price to parents before, I really wrestled with like, should I break it down, to a smaller kind of like more manageable? And yet I'm thankful that you and others have had the experience that you have, where you're like, this, I want it to include everything, because I may not even know that there was a phase 2 after, if I only bought phase 1, that like there was still so much more to learn and to grow in and like to develop for your family. So I think it's kind of a fun way of thinking about the integration of it all. As I mentioned, the investment, again, you helped me with all the pricing structure and stuff like that, as did our accountability group. And, that's just something we all work on together with our businesses. But you as a mom, you didn't get to expense this to a business account or anything like that. You purchased this with your own hard-earned money and valued it in a certain way as a mom, as a parent, having to budget all the different demands of things that you spend on for your kids. So Can you talk about that? Because I think it's often the elephant in the room. No one wants to talk about the cost of things and the investment we make in things for our kids. And while I know your position as a business owner, I would love to kind of hear your opinion and your experience in making that purchase as a mom.
Yes. Well, it's funny because I'm going to kind of integrate some of what I know about the business side. Like, for example, when you do tend to make an investment in something like an online course, or a coaching program, I don't want to say the more you spend, the more likely you are to be able to actually make that time investment as well, because it's not something that you're going to take lightly, right? Like, you're not going to, I've bought courses where I'm like, oh, it's $27. Yeah. Click purchase. And then guess what? You never actually go through it. You never take it seriously. And so from the investment side of, this will make you want to work through it because you will be investing in it, which is a blessing. But on the flip side of that, if I were to say invest in individual private coaching where Ashley and I were spending an hour every other week for however many months, there's no way that she could even provide that kind of comprehensive value in that time frame, which would be so much more expensive to work with. And that's not just with Ashley, that's with any registered dietitian. If you were to spend the same amount of time, it's going to be, yes, it could be a little bit more tailored to your specific things, but that's why she has the unstuck sessions too, to where you can kind of dive in. But what I mean by that is this allows you to have that comprehensive overview where you can go back and revisit maybe if something struck, like if I know I need to do another deep dive on my fridge or my freezer, guess what? I know exactly where to go back in and click on that module. And it's all there for you whenever you need it. So I think from an investment perspective, it's absolutely worth the investment because it's the value that Ashley brings as an expert in this field. And then you, in terms of making that investment, will in turn take it seriously. But even bigger than that, I would say, is like, think about the expenses we do for our kids, right? Like both of my girls were in All-Star Cheer for a minute. My daughter's getting ready to do horseback riding lessons. And you guys, this stuff is so expensive. And when you think about the money that we spend on our kids for these like frivolous little fun, I mean, it's worth it. It can be worth it. But when you can think about the investment that can change not only your kids' lives, but your own lives, or like the integration of having a healthier relationship with your husband, or, comprehensive relationship with your family, like it's truly an investment. It's not an expense. It's not something that's just going to go, out of your pocketbook, and like the cheer shoes that I bought that, my daughter grew out of. So think about it like that. This is definitely, while it's not, a small amount, for me, if this is a priority to you in the way that it was for me, it's absolutely worth it. There's no doubt that the value's there. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful from a few different angles. And I think, as moms, we're used to having to pay for medicine and pediatrician appointments and the sick visits that goodness knows we've all had to do a lot of lately, and antibiotics and all these kind of things, but we don't often even have the capacity to think about preventative health very often. And so it's almost as you said, it's not even an expense, it's an investment. And I think we don't often even leave like a line item on the budget for what investments could we make in not only bettering our own health, as moms and as the nutritional gatekeepers of what food's coming in the house, but in terms of the investment of what kind of foundation we're setting up for our kids and in the years to come. Because as you know, with older kids, feeding our family isn't going to stop. So it's, the investment is going to keep paying returns in the years to come. So I know you mentioned you're a big pasta fan. Let us know in the last question. I just want to ask everyone, and I know you know this kind of from an interview perspective, but I want to know from every guest kind of what is just one of those foods, or what is a meal that has historically really blessed you and just been something that when you think of, you can think back to the person who made it for you and kind of the way that meal made you feel.
Well, it's funny. I know this isn't necessarily directly answering your question, but the minute you said that, one of the products that has absolutely changed our family's life already that I learned from you is Bonza chickpea noodles, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like, literally had no idea what that was a thing. And again, my husband's kind of going gluten-free, carb-free, all that kind of stuff. But he can eat them and will eat them and loves them. My kids eat them and love them. And it's like one of those few things that all four of us actually enjoy. And it's literally been such a lifesaver. And I know it's such a simple thing, but it wasn't something that I even knew about prior to listening to your podcast. So I have to say, if you haven't tried the Bonza, I know that I feel like I felt kind of dumb not knowing that. Or even like the piece of advice in the episode specifically, I remember you were talking about how like tiny, small changes can impact your family. So like trying a different shape of the Bonza pasta noodles, that was kind of specifically what you're talking about. And I was like, what are these Bonza noodles? I've never even tried them. And so that specifically has been a game changer. But I think for me, it's to kind of go a little deeper on like the more historical, warm and fuzzy side, if you will. My grandmother, I think one of the reasons I love pasta is my grandmother made the most incredible mac and cheese. And when I was growing up, she would kind of cater to my pickiness, but in a way that she was so encouraging that I would eat like her butter beans or her green beans, or I would eat her, her beef stew, things like that I wouldn't necessarily try somewhere else. And I think it was because of that. I mean, honestly, if I'm going deep, I think it was kind of that exemplification of the love of Christ and just really that kind of unconditional love where she would make me okay, this is weird, but yes, she made mayonnaise sandwiches, Miracle Whip sandwiches, which I know people are listening like, what are you even, I don't know if it's a Southern thing. But she would make me like 3 Miracle Whip sandwiches. But yeah, then she'd, for dinner, she'd make her yummy green beans and beef tips over rice and I would eat it. And so I think that like when I think back of the grace that we can give to our family by not so much setting strict rules and not like this dietary restrictions, like my word of the year this year is freedom. So there is freedom for what we can offer for our children, but making small choices and again, setting up those foundations of just like the simple things like resetting your kitchen or even just the knowledge of how things like our relationship to food can impact everything like that to me, that I would say would be a good example of that. So
yeah. Well, I love the warm and fuzzy side of it. And like hearing that about your grandmother, and my grandmother gave me country crock margarine spread on saltines. So like I get to some of those things that it's like nostalgic that our grandmothers, I'm like, will we serve our grandkids that someday? Cause I'm like, oh gosh, it, doesn't sound very appealing now, but it was super nostalgic at the time. And I totally understand what you mean, kind of that feeling that they gave as they fed it. And I think it's important because as parents, we are often so wrapped up in the goal of our job is to feed our kids, and we feel the responsibility of like, did they eat it and stuff. And I think as a grandmother, they could often take a step back and be like, I want the way that my granddaughter feels at the table to be just as important, if not more important than what she actually eats in my house. And obviously they weren't carrying the day-to-day responsibility, but I think that's something we can sometimes lose touch with as moms. But I also like hearing the example about the Bonza, because I remember that episode and the question that a friend had asked about kind of changing up the shapes and stuff, but especially since you had shared earlier today that your husband used to think pasta was like evil and going to kill him. I'm glad that, you guys have found something that brings you all together and you all can enjoy it as an easy crowd pleaser for you guys. Heather, I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time. I know, as with any mom, but you particularly, since I know what you're working hard on the day-to-day, your time is very valuable. So I appreciate you taking the time to help me build out this course, but also to help support it as a parent, knowing that, some of the people I'm talking to this week in interviews don't need my community to know them on, a level beyond the episode itself. If you'd be so kind, I'd love to just have you kind of share with everyone how they could find you in case you might be able to help them in their business journey. Obviously everyone doesn't know you the way that I do, but I know that a lot of my audience probably falls into the demographic of the women that you serve. And so I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself and your business and how, any mom who might feel like you're a good fit could follow up with you.
Oh, awesome. Well, I have a podcast called the Called to Lead podcast, where I help network marketing leaders grow their income and impact by choosing faith over fear and leveraging simple systems, because I myself am a network marketer with a makeup company. And so I, again, get to work from home. I have a lot of freedom in my life and business, which is awesome. But I really love to pour that energy through something like a podcast where I can help other people do it. So if that's you, or if you know somebody who is a network marketing leader, definitely check out that podcast. And then also you can go to heatherkburge.com. That's where I've got all kind of my backstory, history, all the things on there. And I'm actually not on social media. So that's definitely the best place to connect with me would be my website or my podcast. So
I'll include the links for all of that in the show notes too, so people can just scroll down and click on that and everything. Because even though I don't, I'm not in network marketing and stuff, I valued learning so much from you and just who you are as a person, as a mom, as a woman of faith, and as a business leader who leads so many other women. So appreciate you being here on the show. Just appreciate you in my life so much. And want to thank you for taking the time to be here. Well, that was the fourth and final interview. I hope that these have been helpful for you. I hope that over the last week, you haven't just gotten to hear me talk about Mealtimes Made Easy Method, or hopefully see the homepage for it so you can evaluate some of the most common FAQs and program details that you might have questions about. But instead, you're getting to see the transformation that real moms and real families are experiencing by being intentional about making the action to invest in the course and begin the process to transform how their family approaches feeding. If you have been on the fence and you've been listening to each of these interviews and you still have not opted to take the plunge into this program, I really want to encourage you to do so. I am praying for you, and I'm praying that if this is the right fit for you, if this is something that will truly bless you and your family, that you'll take that leap of faith to do it. I encourage you to go to mealtimesmadeeasymethod.com one more time so you can enroll before the doors close tomorrow.